Everyone. This is part 3 of the political geography lecture. So if you missed part 1 and part 2, you want to go back and rewatch those parts again. And we left off in the last video down here. We started talking about boundaries, okay, and how boundaries can be either created by physical features such as a mountain range or a river, right, or a desert or something like that, right? That can cause what we consider a boundary, or humans can create boundaries, right? So we can create that this is my property and that's your property, or we can create boundaries like for voting districts, and this is a very hot topic today. Voting districts, especially in the United States, it's always under question, and it's always happening continuously on both sides, both Republicans and for Democrats. So I want to talk a little bit about what we mean by that. So gerrymandering is the process of redrawing legislative boundaries for the purpose of benefiting the party that is currently in power. And that is to keep that idea. So a voting district is a geographic area where citizens go to vote, okay? And those voting districts are set up by the census, okay? And they say this is a voting district, this is a voting district. So if you are a voter, if you're over the age of 18 and you vote, you will actually get something in the mail that says you're in voting district 1 or 2, and this is where you go to vote, okay? Over time, as populations change, voting districts change. And so districts need to make sure that they are properly created, right, or put together. So every year when the census changes, sometimes those voting districts change, okay? Or those districts, state legislators can change, okay, through the process of what we call gerrymandering. And that is drawing a line that says, I'm going to put these like-minded voters together, or I'm going to break up these voters into separate districts. So then they'll vote for the state legislators. And remember, those state legislators have an important role in keeping their party in power, okay, in their state, okay? So it's really, really important. And we use that cracking and packing, either cracking up voters or bringing voters together. And it's super important in terms of elections. Remember, again, our elections are not won by the popular vote in the United States. They're rather won by the Electoral College. And so it's really important that you need 270 of those Electoral College votes to win a presidential election. And that is something that's really, really important. So this video will help you with that. Will help you with understanding what gerrymandering is. So you want to watch this video. You want to take notes on what gerrymandering is. There's some additional articles that I've included in the modules. And this is going on as we speak in Alabama, in Florida, in a lot of areas. This is going on currently as we speak. Right now, the Supreme Court sent it back to the states and said, you need to work on your gerrymandering issues. And what a lot of states have done, especially here in Pennsylvania, is hired an independent organization to draw the lines of the maps for the voting districts. And they did that because they wanted an independent party, because if the individuals that are in office draw those lines, there could be a problem with them, right? Of course, you're going to draw your lines to benefit you. So that is why the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania said, well, we'll hire an independent agency to draw those lines, okay? But that's not always the case everywhere. The Voting Rights Acts of 1965 is something else that we will talk about, but it's super important. It's something that is under attack right now. It is something that you should keep your eye on and understand. What is the Voting Rights Act of 1965? Why is it important? Why is it under attack? It is something that we need to be really careful about, is that setting up hurdles for individuals to vote was outlawed in 1965 with the Voter Rights Act, with polling, taxes, and literacy tests to keep African Americans from voting. Well, a lot of that is coming back. And of course, that is, of course, for specific people to win presidential elections. And I think we need to take note of that. We need to make sure that barriers are not put into place to keep individuals from voting. Okay, so that's gerrymandering. The next thing we're going to talk about is maritime borders, and that also deals with, remember we were talking about Antarctica and all the different territories that people own. Maritime borders are also something that comes under question and scrutiny. 12 nautical miles off of a coast. Nautical miles are different than miles. So 12 nautical miles off of every coastline is owned by that specific country or state. Okay, once you cross that 12 nautical mile line, that is what we call pirate waters, right? Or waters that aren't kind of under anybody. And a lot of people do, of course, all sorts of bad things outside of that 12 nautical miles. Some of those are pirate waters, right? Number two is the fact that a lot of times people dump illegally off of those 12 nautical miles because no one really regulates those. So a lot of sewage is dumped, a lot of trash is dumped off of those 12 nautical miles. It becomes, of course, in the environmental world, a big source of contention because it's like, well, whose job is it to clean up this mess? Okay, so it's really important. Okay, and that's why, like for example, China or even Dubai and other places creating land masses like islands within their 12 nautical miles creates land, right? In those 12 nautical miles. Now they can't go build land outside of those 12 nautical miles, but okay, that can come into question. All right, so that's maritime borders. You can see here, this map tries to show you where 12 nautical miles is off of every landmass. It's not a great map, but it does its best. The next thing that we're going to talk about are separatist movements, and depending upon what semester you take me in, you may have a devolution assignment, and there's of course information about what that term means and why it's important, but the rise of separatist movements is definitely a big thing to follow. It's revolve around questions of control over religious practices, language, or other culture, and usually this is a minority group that wants to break away from the majority and they want to separate, right? So the United States was formed through a separatist movement in the British Empire, right? And a current separatist movement has happened between Scotland and Great Britain. Scotland did not vote to stay with Great Britain in 2014 in order to stay in the European Union. But since Brexit has happened, the UK breaking away from the EU. Since then, there has been a renewed interest in the Scottish separatist movement, like they want to be their own thing. And you'll hear a lot of people talk about this, but you hear a lot of different separatist movements, which is a smaller sect that wants to move away or start their own group in terms of, or own country even. They want to have their own autonomy. And so that is something that you definitely want to read about in the textbook and understand. So I hope these three parts, I know they were long-winded and there was a lot to them, but I think it's important for you to understand what we're talking about in these sections and some of the terminology. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.